Hi, everybody. It's Christina, the Tarot Biz Mentor here from the Profitable Psychic Business and Divination Academy. So I hope you guys are doing well. I see we already have a couple of people here. So hi, welcome. Happy Friday. Hope you guys are doing awesome. How was your week? Hey, Frayne. Good to see you. Thanks for joining me today. All right. Let me make sure we are in the right spot and let me mark this as an announcement so everybody can find it easily. How was your guys' weeks? Did you guys follow through on your goals from Monday? How did you do? Hey, Amanda, good to see you. Thanks for joining me here. We're going to get started here in just a few moments. Today, we're going to be continuing on our series of the archetypes that we've been kind of working through. All right, pin to top. Okay, we should be good to go. Hey, Freya, Mario, Crystal. Hey, guys, welcome, welcome. Good to see you guys. Okay, so I'm unfortunately not seeing comments, so that means I'm going to have to open up a new window. So give me just a second and we'll get started here. Okay, so I will just have to read the comments through this way, and that'll just have to work. Amanda, you're so sweet. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the warrior archetype. Now, if you're not sure what the heck I'm talking about here, so this is the second part of a video series that we've been going through. We started last week. There is already a video on the healer. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about here, everybody has a combination of archetypes that make up who they are right here, right now, right? And who you are going to be in your business. And I created this kind of quiz to kind of give you an idea of what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what are some modalities or even some spiritual coaching practices or even niches that you could get into that would be suited for you. I have a free course. It's called Discover Your Soul's Calling Through Spiritual Life Coaching. And what you get is you get a 5-question quiz, and there's 11 signs that you aren't living your divine life purpose in there. And if you relate to any of those signs, definitely want to take this quiz. And it's a 5-question quiz, and you will also get a free introductory course on spiritual life coaching. So if you're a tarot reader or a psychic reader or some other type of woo-woo practitioner and you want to make the shift into spiritual life coaching, or you just want to attract the people that want to do the work, you know what I'm saying here. So that is for you. And there's a whole bunch of tips, and I'm only adding to it every single week. So we're going to be going through all 4 of the archetypes that we're going to be working with for this specific purpose. So I have put that into the comments below. I've pinned it. So you guys can take that after today's training. Also, if you are on YouTube, if you're watching this as a replay on YouTube or you're watching this as a replay on Instagram. So on YouTube, if you look down in the description box below, there's going to be a pinned comment, or in the description box, you can find the link to the quiz in either of those places. If you're on IG and you're watching this on IGTV, then if you just go to my profile and you look in the website section, it will take you automatically right to the quiz. So that's how you can access it. All right, so let's get started in because I have a lot to say about warrior. I am a warrior. So my makeup right now in my coaching business is half and half warrior shaman, and then I have a little bit of mystic kind of thrown in there. So I'm really excited to talk about warrior. So before we get started, how many do we have any warriors here? Hi, Cece, good to see you. Hi, Rosa, good to see you. So let me know in the comments below, are you a warrior? Do you relate to the warrior archetype? And I'm curious how many people we have here who are warriors. I know we're probably going to have a lot, just simply because we tend to attract who we are. So a lot of, if you identify as one of the 4 archetypes, chances are you're going to attract clients that identify as those same archetypes. So since I am a warrior, shaman, mystic hybrid, we're probably going to have a lot of warriors here. All right. So let's get started. The very first thing that I could say about warrior is that they have the gift of fortitude, right? So whenever I think of warrior, I think of someone who has leadership qualities. I think of someone who is has a very commanding aura, a very striking kind of energy, kind of like that energy that you notice as they kind of walk into the room, or just someone that just seems really, really confident. That's something that is really like common with the warriors, is they tend to just have this sense of confidence. Now, it doesn't mean that they're confident about everything. It doesn't mean that they're always confident, and it's not really so much as like an overconfidence. It's not, that can be a shadow of the warrior, and we're going to talk about some of the blocks for warrior and stuff like that later. But it's really just a confidence of being at peace, if that makes sense at all. Right? Does anybody understand what I mean by that? So, as a warrior, I think the most important talent of the warrior is that they have the strong leadership abilities and they have the leadership capabilities. Now, if you're a blocked warrior, or you're, in your shadow as a warrior, you may not feel like that. And that's something that you will work on. That's something through, your spiritual journey, through learning about different coaching modalities and different healing modalities and spiritual modalities, things like that, different types of techniques. And we're going to talk about some of those techniques today too, which is going to be really exciting for you guys, I think. But as far as warrior goes, it's the leadership qualities that really make the warrior the warrior. Warriors are excellent at reminding other people about how strong and how brave and courageous that they are. They really help people understand their true worth and value. They're the people that remind other people to not take crap from other people, right? Does that make sense? So as a warrior, if you identify as a warrior, you are really, really good at helping people understand and even identify like toxic, it could be relationships, it could be toxic friendships, situations like at work or something along those lines, where it's like it is relationship based, but maybe they're not getting paid enough for their work or something along those lines. But they're really, really good at helping people identify toxic relationships, situations, even limiting mindset beliefs. Whenever I think of warrior, I think of you can do anything, right? Because that's kind of like the warrior energy. They bring that to the table. Like, you are capable of doing anything, right? And so to the warrior, like, everything is possible. And the main thing with warriors that I see that is so important, not only for just themselves, and we're going to talk about that too, but for themselves, but how they help others, especially in a spiritual coaching kind of world or perspective or lens, is by helping others establish strong boundaries, right? And so with the warrior, they need to also have strong boundaries as well. And they need to be really good at enforcing those boundaries, because the warrior, all of the archetypes are like a role model in their own way, shape, or form, right? But the warrior themselves is a role model for enforcing strong boundaries, right? In a loving and compassionate way. Like, there's something to be said about someone being in their power enough that they don't have to like resort to like expressing the overindulgence of that anger. Okay. So what I mean by that is every warrior is like knows that going to war or going into battle is like a last resort thing. Like, you've tried everything else, and it's not like you're excited to like go to bat. It's not like you're excited or like you anticipate really having to battle or to deal with conflict. And warriors are awesome at conflict resolution. So that's one of their things, is their talents, is that they tend to be really peaceful, and they tend to be the people that kind of keep the peace, but they also tend to be the people that they're kind of like energetic kung fu masters, if that makes sense. They will do anything that they can do to keep the peace. They will do anything that they can do to make sure that, conflict doesn't reach a certain point. But they are also people that have no problem like having face-to-face confrontation, right? And so if you are scared of confrontation, then you are likely in your shadow as being a warrior. I know I was for a really long time. I'm also a Libra, so like I hate confrontation. I hate having to have those difficult conversations, and I used to shy away from them. And I used to, one of the big things with warrior is that they can be a little passive aggressive with it. And that's how, if you know and you recognize passive aggressive behavior in yourself, you have a blocked warrior archetype within you. Because the warrior is someone who wants to deal with conflict straight on. They're also the type of people that want to get everything out in the open before anything goes too deep. Like, I know a lot of warriors are people who, especially as my clients and myself, they're people that want to really make sure that if you are working with someone in a coaching relationship, that it's going to be a good fit. And like, the warrior has no problem like saying, these are my ethics, these are my boundaries, my morals, my values, my beliefs, and this is what you're going to have to agree to, or this is what this is my coaching perspective that hopefully you want to share in this perspective with me, right? And so they're very thorough people. They're very detailed people, very thorough, organizational, that sort of thing. They are also one of the most inspirational and motivational types of light workers that there are, right? Warriors, in my opinion, are what we call the online influencer, right? So people kind of probably have heard that word before. They maybe aren't really exactly sure what that means. I looked it up online because it's actually a lot of different things. It can be kind of difficult to put that into like one sentence, because an influencer is a lot of different things, yeah, right? And so they have a lot of different roles and they influence, right, in a lot of different ways. But in the marketing terms, as far as being an influencer in the business of being an influencer, that type of person is someone who can basically, have a lot of influence over people buying patterns, buying habits. Like, for example, an influencer usually gets like brand deals, and like I watch a lot of I used to be in the beauty industry, right? So a lot of you know that. I used to be a hairdresser. So I'm still really into hair, really still into makeup, that sort of thing. Like there's no such thing as too much makeup or no such thing as too many hair appliances for me. So I'm constantly watching on Instagram or Facebook, like all these women that do, like they're brand ambassadors for specific companies. Like, there's a couple different ones out there. I won't name them, but there's a couple different ones out there. And they basically show up and they show up themselves like on live, like using a certain tool or something like that, or using a certain product. And it's kind of like they're trying to get people to purchase that product. Now, in my opinion, a good or service, whatever it is, I'm sure you've seen them, like the videos for like grocery delivery or meal delivery plan and meal plans and things like that, right? Anything that's kind of like lifestyle based, like things and services and products that we use on a daily basis, or however often, that make our lives easier or enhance our lives, right? And we want to share that with other people as a warrior influencer. And so it's really interesting to see how the warrior kind of shows up. Something I have noticed is that, and one of the things that I know with influencers and working with influencers and me trying to kind of get into being an influencer, especially for this upcoming year, I want to, focus more on like lifestyle products and services and things like that. I've mentioned that in previous videos, but, it's really interesting because there's a lot of blocking around that, like wanting to be an influencer, because a lot of people just think that they can't really trust the influencer. And that is a thing, like that's a problem, right? So some influencers will just take the money and to just take the sponsorship deals, and they'll try to sell you something that maybe they don't even really like or even care for. But the best influencers, in my opinion, are the people that actually do use the products and services and want to share that with people. And so when I work with clients and spiritual coaching clients and people who want to become spiritual coaches, or they want to become an influencer in some way, a lot of that revolves around having to create this awareness for them that yes, that you can be an influencer, you can share your services and products that you love, that make your lifestyle or enhance your lifestyle, and you can do that in a way that doesn't feel icky because you're picking products that you really love. And okay, so we spent too much time on the influencer thing, but I really wanted to kind of bring that up because I plan on talking more about that in the future, because I know a lot of you are interested in becoming an influencer. So now, as far as marketing goes, so warriors, backtracking here, back to the point here. Warriors are influencers, right? They're motivational, they're influencers. Warriors' goal is to get to people to take action, right? So when it comes to marketing yourself, if you identify as in the warrior archetype, it's really your gold, your marketing gold is going to be in how you share your lifestyle with people, right? Because for the warrior, it's a lot about accountability and making smarter, healthier choices in the long term. Yeah. So, especially with the people that I want to work with and the people that are probably listening to this training today, it's really for you guys, it's about managing that work and life balance and that lifestyle that kind of goes into that. So, for example, a lot of my warrior clients are really big into self-care, and that usually kind of manifests as exercise or activity or just moving your body, which we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Or I have a lot of warriors who are vegans or vegetarians or some other side of the spectrum like keto or carnivore, and they take diet and health very, very seriously. A lot of my warriors are actually people also that are dealing with an illness, condition, or disease, kind of like chronic illness or a hidden illness, or one that's not very like out in the open that you wouldn't necessarily know that they have that. It also could be mental health as well. So my warriors are people that are really big on advocacy for work-life balance and just like taking care of yourself, right? And making good choices. For the warriors, they're also really big on activating life purpose, right? So they're really big on ascending to these higher ideals. Like, who are you really supposed to be? Yes, you're you, but who are you like on a global impactful, like if you were going to help heal the world, and help the world be a better place, like finding your higher life purpose, right? So warriors to me are kind of like I mentioned how they're really organized and they're really tedious and detail oriented. They're kind of like the people that are like, a place for everything and everything in its place, right? Now, that may not necessarily manifest as being completely, it's not like a Virgo energy where it's completely organized and things like that, but it just means that everything has a purpose. So they're not really the sentimental type. They're not really the people that hold on to things, They're more of like, I have a lot of warriors that actually do feng shui or they do Marie Kondo kind of stuff where they organize and they do things like, that whole concept of is having an object in your presence, in your space, does it actually have purpose and meaning, or is it just taking up space, right? So that's why I said that they're kind of like kung fu masters, where they really understand like energy and they understand the flow of energy, and they're really, really good at seeing at what is blocking energy, right? And so the healer is kind of similar to that. So the healer can see that and the healer can transmute that more on an internal level. On an external level, yes, because it's about setting the aesthetic, like with the aromatherapy or, whatever else kind of relaxation techniques around you. Like setting the aesthetic is more of the healer archetype, whereas the warrior is more of like setting, what is practical and what is useful. So they're definitely more logical brain. They're definitely more like mathematical, kind of practical way of thinking. So whenever I think of warriors, I also think of people that like, they help people get unstuck, if that makes sense. They're also really, really good at career-based coaching and career-based readings. So again, along the lines of like warriors having like a purpose for everything and everything needs to have meaning. If it doesn't, then it's just taking up space and it's blocking my energy type of like vibe. They can also do that with people. Like they can also help people uncover their divine life purpose or figure out like what is their higher calling, their soul's calling, kind of like what I'm doing right now, actually. And, the whole idea of breaking you guys down into archetypes is a very warrior type of thing to do, because you really want to understand what makes people strong, where their weaknesses are, and where we can like unblock that energy. And so they're also really not just at life purpose, but also really, really good at career. Like, for example, if you have a client who is wanting to switch careers, or you have a client that wants to go back to school, or you have a client that wants to start a spiritual business, or you have a client that is in a job and they like their job okay, but they get passed up for like promotions and things like that, and they just want to have more confidence at their job. They want to have better work relationship skills and better work ethic, and they want to increase their confidence at work so that they can get the position that they really want and that they really know that they deserve, or even as simple as just asking for the raise. These are all really good warrior things. Hey Mel, good to see you. Marissa, good to see you. We'll pause for comments here just a second. Hey Lynn, good to see you. Marissa says, is that like Instagram? Yes, exactly. She's talking about the influencer thing. Yeah, so Instagram is notorious for that, but also I mean, you can be an Instagram, you can be an influencer anywhere, but yeah. All right. So good question. Good question. But the key thing that makes warriors so integral to, making the world a better place is that they have the unique ability to build people up. They're self-esteem builders, right? They're encouragers, they're motivators. They help people be accountable. And it's usually through their most difficult and troubling times that they can help people remind themselves of how strong that they really were. So one of the questions in the quiz was, how would you deal with how would you deal with the client that was going through a difficult situation? Like, what would be your go-to? And, there's different things that you could pick. And the warrior is the one that reminds people that they've been through stuff before. They made it out alive. They have a 100% survival rate as of, right now. They've made it through it. They lived through it, and they will live through it again, and they will get through it, and you guys will get through it together, right? So the warrior is more of like the one that holds your hand, that walks you through the process, that says, you are not alone. I'm here for you, right? And they are, kind of like a guide like that in a way. They tend to be really strong-willed people, very strong-willed, very rebellious, strong-willed people. They tend to kind of come out of the womb like they know what they want and they know what they don't want. I was definitely that kid. Like, I didn't need a lot of parenting, and the only parenting I really needed is when I started going off track and, hanging out with the wrong people and stuff like that. But otherwise, I knew what I wanted and I knew what I didn't want. And knowing what I didn't want was very difficult for my parents and my parental guardians because, I was a very strong-willed child, very type A personality. Type A personality is very much like achievement-oriented. Like, they set goals and they meet those goals, and sometimes it can be even a little obsessive, right? So they're the type that they see a problem, they fix it. And what I really love about warriors is the warriors that are activated in their warrior archetype, and they are in their flow or in alignment, so we might call it being in alignment, is that they have what I call the lion's heart, right? They're courageous and they're brave, but they're also really compassionate. They're the type that they'll stand up for what's wrong. They'll stand up against what's wrong, and they'll stand up for what's right. So warriors can be very inspirational. They can be very motivational. They are very outspoken, opinionated people. They are very charismatic. And because of this, people just naturally want to follow them. They are also automatically usually very responsible people who show up on time, that keep their commitments, that stay true to their word, that sort of thing. Integrity is everything to the warrior. Authenticity is also very, very important, but integrity, that's number one. You will very rarely ever see a warrior do something that they don't actually believe is the right thing to do, right? And so a lot of the times warriors are people who, if you work a job, they're usually people who are thrust into management positions or management type of roles, or they're the people that are promoted. Even if they don't want to be promoted, they're usually the people that, because they're so consistent, because they're so reliable and dependable, they're rewarded with more work. You guys know what I mean by that, right? Like, I remember working jobs and like, just wanting to work like part-time, and because I was working on my other business, or I just didn't want to work full-time. I wanted to have time off for myself, right? Manage my family, manage my life, and do what the things that I want to do. And I was always the person that was basically shoved out of jobs for being too good at my job. Like for example, like I would be working at salons and they would immediately, like within, I'm not kidding you, within a couple weeks, like they could see that I was someone that was trustworthy, reliable, dependable, etc. Had that warrior energy. And they would promote me to like manager, which meant more hours, more responsibility, less work-life balance, like more work, less life, right? And that was the antithesis of what I wanted. Like, and it was almost kind of like, in a way, I don't know if you can relate to this or if you've experienced this before, but it was kind of like I was punished for being too, I guess, too much of a good person, not really a good person, but too much being too reliable, I guess, being too consistent. So that was something I really struggled with for a while. And I didn't understand why people, and this can be something for, as a block for the warrior too, where, you see the people who aren't doing a good job, who are slacking off, who are not reliable, trustworthy, dependable, that sort of thing. And it's kind of like almost like they get it too easy in a way. Whereas the warrior can become really jaded because it's almost kind of like the leadership. What I'm trying to backtrack to is that the leadership role, whether they like it or not, for the warrior is usually thrust upon them simply because it's in their nature to be that type of person. And that can be really, really frustrating for the warrior. Amanda said you're spot on. Okay, so you resonate with that, all right? So awesome, good. Now, warriors do have strong wills and they also have very strong personalities. They can tend to be fearless. Now, that's not always the case. For example, when I came out of the womb, I was afraid of everything. I was very shy, couldn't look people in the eye, couldn't talk, and very barely talk. Didn't start talking until much later in my life. Was not very expressive. And I hid a lot of the times because I was scared of a lot of things, right? And so for the warrior, yes, some of them will come out and they will be, tenacious and fearless of everything. But it didn't quite happen like that for me. That was something that I had to learn. I used to be very scared. I've always been scared of everything, but at the same time, I've always been that kind of like, I'll go first type of person. Nobody else will do it, so I'll do it. Like when it came to like projects in school or like projects at work, I was always the person that did almost all the work, or I was always the person that like, it kind of goes back to like, if nobody else was going to do it, then I will do it. And that's kind of like the mentality that the warrior has. And so we're going to talk about like blocks and stuff, but control issues is huge for the warrior because they kind of learn throughout their life that, nobody else will do it as good as that they can, or that nobody else is that reliable, right? So warriors tend to kind of go through this thing where they kind of believe that they kind of have to, and they kind of become the martyr. We'll talk about that more. But like I said, it doesn't mean that warriors are without fear. In fact, warriors are some of the people that really have been the most fearful their entire lives. And through, maybe they have to, maybe they find themselves, maybe, they find themselves divorced, single, parent, and then they have to, become that warrior for their child, or, their parents pass away when they're young or something. And so they have to figure out how to fend for themselves. And so a lot of the warriors are activated through the catalyst of loss or trauma or something along those lines, because eventually the warrior gets to the point and says, well, I can sit here and be scared of everything and not do anything and not have anything, not go anywhere, that sort of thing, or I can hopefully face these fears. And it's not that the warrior is fearless necessarily. The warrior can come off as fearless. In fact, the warrior feels fear deeper than probably any of the other archetypes, but they refuse to be controlled by it. Does that make sense? So they tend, also warriors, in my opinion, the warriors that I've worked with, and myself included, they do have very specific fears. But here's the interesting thing about warriors is that they tend to have more like phobias or like irrational fears, and they're usually like trauma based or even irrational. You know what I mean? Like most warriors I know, including myself, are not scared of what most people would be scared of, like the day to day kind of stuff. But warriors tend to have like, they're kind of scared of like weird things, or they're sort of like kitsch about certain types of things. For example, like, I'll give you one of mine. So I am deeply, deeply terrified of shots and needles and getting my blood drawn and things like that. But I have no problem sitting for 4 hours getting tattooed. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where, like, you have these irrational fears that are just completely irrational. Like, it doesn't make sense at all why they are there. It's usually trauma based, or it could be past life based, something along those lines. But most warriors I know have very irrational fears, if that makes sense. But for warriors, it's like a mental game. It's all mental. Some of it's physical, yes, but a lot of it is mind over matter when it comes to the warriors. They're known to also to be natural healers, just like the healer archetype, the shaman, or the mystic. Everybody is a healer in their own right. But the warrior themselves, above all of the other archetypes, don't necessarily identify as being a healer, right? It's more so that they have a healing type of presence, which is kind of similar to shaman and healer, but it's not quite like that. They don't tend to identify as a healer. They tend to just identify more as someone who helps them be accountable, that sort of thing. They all have their own healing powers. Like the healer archetype really provides sanctuary, right? We talked about that in the previous video. The shaman, who we're going to be talking about next week, I'm really excited to talk about them. They deal more with like the unseen world and the healing of the unseen world. Like we're talking like spiritual illnesses, or we could even be talking about inhuman spirits. We could even be talking about demonic forces and demonic entities, or anything like fae, jinn, that sort of thing. But they tend to work more healing and more of like the unseen kind of like darker parts we're going to talk more about that next week, the upper, the middle, and the lower worlds, that kind of thing. But the mystic also uses natural earth energies to heal, as well as energetic manipulation. So when I say they all heal, and they all have different ways of healing. But the warrior, in my opinion, is the least healer-ish, the least healer-esque of all of the types. They really believe very profoundly in activating other people's abilities to heal themselves, right? Like one of the things about the warriors as a healer is that they hate codependency. They are just driven crazy by it. They cannot stand it. And so what they really try to get everybody to believe is that they are able to heal themselves, and they really want to give other people the tools to heal themselves and to stay accountable to themselves. And they do this through, it's called the triple heater. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but it's the heart, the solar, and the sacral chakras. The emblem, if I had to think of one symbol, like I think of like the healer, the symbol is like the caduceus, right? Like the snake with the staff, and it's kind of like the doctor, the person that has the remedies, right? Now, when I think about the warrior, I think about flames. I think about fire, because the fire is very, very, very important. The element of fire is very, very important to the warrior. Water would probably be the healer, and it would probably be air for the shaman, and then it'd probably be earth for the mystic if I had to put elements on it. But they are really, really good. Warriors are really, really good at igniting the flame in other people. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Kundalini. So do you guys know much about Kundalini and stuff like that? Are you guys interested in that? Do you guys read about that kind of stuff? Mel says, that's happened to me in so many teacher positions. I bore the burden and was so cynical and frustrated too many times. And I totally understand what you mean by that. I totally get it. Mel says, I've been called fearless by friends. I can't tell you how many times. Mel says, I'm afraid of burglars. Okay, so you're afraid of people being in the house. Yeah, or you're afraid of people entering a space that they're not supposed to be. You're afraid of people crossing that boundary. Yes, I can absolutely agree with that. Frayne says, healing presence, yes. Yeah. Okay, no problem, Mel. have read about it. Awesome. So you guys are a little bit familiar with it. Okay. So we're going to talk about first before we get into the Kundalini and stuff like that. Let's talk about something else and kind of lead into that because it's important to understand how the warrior manifests and how they create because it's going to be important to how you manage that fire, right? And what are some of the struggles with having a lot of fire and some of the struggles of having not enough fire, right? The element of fire. So, since warriors are people who lead by example, they are typically instant manifestors. They're usually powerhouses of energy, right? Maybe not always on a physical level, but they're the type of people that always have something going on mentally as well. So, I'm not always physically very active, but I am mentally very active. Like, I struggle to go to sleep at night, and like, I only get a couple hours of sleep, and that's a very warrior-esque type of thing where you're always creating, you're always building, especially as a warrior, always building like these imaginary things in your mind and working things out. And the shaman, they share that with the shaman because the shaman's really about like systems and strategies and traditions and like consistent ways to do things, like repeatable routine habits and ways to do things. The warriors are always thinking about things. They're always thinking and creating these worlds or these processes and things like that in their brain. And so because of that, they have no problem with their imagination. And so they're very, very powerful manifestors. So the warrior can manifest something like that. They're super, super powerful at it. And this can also be kind of a curse. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Because, if the warrior thinks about something, gives too much energy to something, like a passing thought or something that would be nice, could be nice, but not necessarily something I really want, they can actually manifest that without even really trying. And so the warrior really, above all of the other archetypes, really has to be careful and conscious and clear about what they're trying to manifest because things just happen very, very easily for warriors. And sometimes it happens too easily, and sometimes it can cause problems. That can actually cause blocks and detours and different things where it's actually keeping you from what you really, really want, right? So it's like if I had to put this in like a different way, it's kind of like being a very, very talented artist where you're almost too talented and you can mimic any art style and you can do anything you want. And you have all of these capabilities and all of these ways that you can create art. You're good at any type of art medium, but the struggle is you never really find out who you really are, right? Because you can do everything, you never really find out what you are truly, truly good at. And so it takes a little bit longer for, especially me as a coach, to bring out the true skills and the true alignment and flow for the warrior because frankly, they're good at everything and they could literally do anything and be successful at it, but they might not get that level of fulfillment out of it that they need to see it through. So, and we're going to talk about that too, about warriors tend to be people who build and destroy and build and destroy and build and destroy. And they go through this pattern over and over and over again. And so they can be very, very busy. Several years can go by and they still have nothing to show for it because they're constantly in that build and destroy kind of mode. And they go through that. And that can be one of the blocks too. But they're very, very powerful manifestors. And frankly, they're their most powerful type of manifestor. Especially when their energy is channeled towards one particular thing. Yeah. But it can be very destructive without that constructive creative channeling. Like it can be almost kind of like, every time they get ahead, it's something like externally kind of falls into their lap and takes them off course, right? And it's because things are just naturally attracted to them. Warriors are very magnetic, right? And so things are very just naturally attracted to them. And they can also take on responsibilities that aren't really their responsibility to deal with, but they kind of make it out to be their responsibility. Anyways, we'll talk about that more when we get to the blocks. But as a warrior, a lot of the time when you're coaching people and you're in the coaching space with clients and you're working with people, most of the time as a warrior, you're going to be working with people who are dealing with like anxiety or burnout or fear, working with people who have fear because they see you as someone who's fearless, so that they want what you got, right? And how to overcome fear, how to get through that, how to deal with those anxieties. There are also people who are going to be dealing with like people who feel like they're hopeless, or people that feel like, like when things seem destitute, right? Like they've tried everything else, your clients have tried everything else, and now they're finally realizing that, they don't know what to do, and they can't figure it out for themselves. You're going to be dealing with people who have tried very independent, responsible, resilient people. But, when you're dealing with people as a life coach, as a warrior, you're dealing with people who have basically tried everything else, right? So a lot of my clients, just speaking from personal experience as a warrior, a lot of my clients come to me because they've tried everything else. They've bought the expensive life coaches, they've bought the expensive programs, the 10K programs, and they've got nothing to show for it, right? And so usually by the time my clients find me, they've already spent a year or two on stuff that didn't do anything for them. And so one of my biggest things as a coach is to try to build them back up and say, you know what, actually it is possible. You just haven't found what works for you, right? And it's not necessarily all the time that those expensive coaches and the expensive programs and things like that they've done weren't helpful. It's usually that they're not customized enough, or it's usually because they buy into a system or a strategy and it doesn't really fit their personality. So they think that it can't really work because it's not working for them. You know what I mean? So as a warrior coach, I've always kind of noticed this about myself, is that I tend to be more of a coach of, okay, well, I can show you 100 different ways to do that. How do you want to do it? Right? And then I will build a marketing system or plan or process or strategy that will amplify that for you. That's kind of like how I think about going into a coaching session. It's not so much that I know what I'm doing and, this works for me, so it has to work for you type of thing. I've never been that type of person. I've always been the type of person that says, okay, what are you struggling with? And why do you think it's not working? And what do you want to do? And how can we make it work? Right? So that's kind of like the warrior type of energy as a coach. But a lot of the energy, it goes into inspiring and motivating your clients, reminding them that things are possible even when they don't feel possible, right? Breaking through. If you identify as someone who really loves to work with people, like identify limiting beliefs, shadow work is more of the shaman, in my opinion, but warrior does do a little bit of shadow work. But if you are someone who really identifies with like mindset, or like helping people overcome limiting mindsets or limiting beliefs, or helping people identify beliefs or patterns that are toxic, or that kind of result in self-sabotage, that sort of thing, that's definitely a warrior. So warriors really help people open up to possibilities. They help them set goals, stay accountable to those goals, and stick to their resolutions, right? Now, that doesn't mean as a warrior that your life is always perfect. It doesn't mean that you're always 100% a role model in every single thing that you do. We really don't, there's really no such thing as that. I've bought the high-end coaches. I've bought the high-end programs. I'll be the first to tell you that, the people that present perfect on social media, once you get into their programs, I mean, it's like... It's almost comical. You'll have the some of the coaches that'll show up on Instagram like perfectly polished. They have the designer brands. They're on the beach drinking the Mai Tai in Maui or Bermuda or wherever. And then you get into their programs and they're literally just, in their pajamas with their hair up and, like this, not, you guys know what I mean by that? Like, the warriors for warrior, it's really about transparency. And that's where you're really going to get your soul clients with the warrior, is just showing up and being yourself. Ditching this whole idea that you have to be perfect, or that you have to, you can't show your struggles, or you can't show the messy parts and things like that. That's a really big learning curve for the warrior. And that's going to be really important to attracting your soul clients, because no matter what, if you're a warrior coach and you help people with, like, let's say you help people with self-love, but you have a crappy relationship history, or you haven't met your twin flame, or, whatever like that. Or you are a health coach, but you happen to be a little overweight, or you don't always stick to your diet 100% of the time. Or you're an organizational coach and sometimes your house looks like a tornado ripped through it, right? That is all real. And that's what people who want to work with warrior coaches really, really want. And what it really is, what the shift here is that the warrior inspires people after, if they've gotten off the train, they've fallen off the train, to get back on the train, right? So with the warrior, it's not about living perfectly. I mean, that's nice and all. If you can do that, kudos to you. Like, that's a lot of energy. I have more important things to do than live my life perfectly or be perfect all the time. That's a lot of stress to be perfect all the time, isn't it? It's a lot of hype to live up to. But where I really set myself as different, as an accountability partner, as a coach, is that no matter what, if you fall off, that's fine. You're human. It's going to happen. But at the same time, let's get back on the train. Let's make better choices, smarter choices. And moving forward, let's try to just do the best that we can. Right. And so warriors, I think, become really humbled by that. And I think that that's really attractive as a warrior coach. Especially because that's what, in my opinion, that's what makes warriors so helpful. It's because they're not about the shame. They're not about, shaming people. Though some warrior coaches are, and some people need that. Some people are, as spiritual life clients, coaching clients, are attracted to that. They're attracted to more of like the sergeant, corporal kind of like, punishment type of coaching, because that's what works for their personality. But it doesn't always have to be that way. And I think that that's why people don't necessarily always hire warrior coaches. It's because they think that they're not worthy of them. They think that they're not going to live up to their expectations. And so as a warrior coach, your main breakthrough with getting people to trust you, especially online, is going to be by ditching this whole idea of perfection and just being real and transparent, but also at the same time, motivating people to make better choices. Does that make sense with everybody? Marissa says, Kundalini is very interesting to me. Me too. I've really been getting into it more this year. Mel says, story of my life. Chelly says, like a chameleon is how I looked at it. Yes, very much so. Isn't that interesting? Marissa says, that actually happened to me also. Yeah. Yep. Hey, Jennifer, good to see you. Marissa says, do warriors track their clients' progress easily, or is that more connected to another archetype? Okay, so when it comes to tracking progress, I would say that can definitely be the warrior. Absolutely. No, I think that would be warrior. Definitely. That could also be a little bit of mystic, because mystics are like definitely big on manifestation, and their mystics are definitely result oriented. But yeah, I would say definitely that the warriors track clients' progress, but they don't, not unless they, number one, want that. The client needs to actually want that. Otherwise they can feel smothered, which the warrior can smother people. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. But it's more so like, keeping people accountable to their goals. So yes, tracking progress can be a very, very big part of it. But I would say progress is kind of secondary to simply just, mental health, right? Does that make sense? So let's say, for example, you're a warrior coach and you specialize in, let's say, health coaching or something like that, okay? So as a warrior, you help people figure out their diet, help them with exercise plans, help them with dietary plans, that sort of thing. And so part of your job as a warrior is hopefully they are making progress in being healthy. But as a warrior health life coach, we don't necessarily look at like, how much weight they've lost. We look at like, has your mood improved? Are you combating your cravings? Are you getting your movement in? So progress, yes. But I think just my perspective, just my lens, my worldview is, I think warriors, it's always going to be accountability over progress, right? So it'll probably be, in my opinion, like maybe 60 to 70% accountability and maybe 40 to 30% progress oriented. Now, when I look at progress, that's that can definitely be a big part of it, but you want to make sure that your client is like on board with that and that they are on board with the micromanaging. Maybe that's not the best word to put it, but yeah, something along those lines. Lynn says, I see those people. Yeah, right? Right? And so when it comes to motivating people as a warrior, your coaching clients, and what you're really going to be focusing on is motivating people by establishing healthy boundaries. That's a good one. Building up self-esteem, self-worth, and value, and to remind people how strong they really are. That, in a nutshell, is the warrior. Like, that is like what warriors really want their clients to believe, right? So the healer archetype is more like, you can find that zen within you, right? Like, you can find that peace within you, or you are capable of taking care of yourself and giving yourself what you need, meeting your own needs, right? Whereas the warrior is kind of like, you can do this. We've been here before, or we've done certain things that are similar to this. This is not going to be as scary as you think, and I'll be with you the whole way. We'll get through it together, and I'll show you how. I'll guide you. I'll lead the way. That's really what the warrior is, the essence of the warrior. Now, I have a lot of warriors who are really into health and wellness. That team's like, the healers are also into health and wellness, but more like mental health and wellness, like more about like maintenance, like helping you like with massage therapy or like meditation and stuff like that. Where the warrior is more about like the physical health. Mental health, yes, too, but more mental health is also more shaman, and physical health is more mystic too. So it's kind of interesting to kind of think about those and how they kind of alternate. Anyways, but so the warrior is more, physical health is always going to be very, very important to the warrior. So anything like yoga, qigong, tai chi. I've also known a lot of warriors who are belly dancers, who are also, they do like ecstatic dance, or they're into sports like rock climbing, or they like running, or they just like being physical. They like being in their body. I've noticed that a lot of warriors have struggled with like body disconnection, mind-body disconnection, or like dissonance, or like being really detached from your body. And so warriors can kind of be in their head a lot more than in their physical body, because they're such active imagination, right? But I've noticed that one of the best healing things that a warrior can do to build up their own self-esteem and to build that daily practice and discipline that they need to thrive is through establishing some type of physical routine, some type of physical habit, whether that's just light stretching and doing it on a regular basis, or that's doing yoga or Zumba, or just doing something, or getting on the treadmill, or walking around the block for 20 minutes or something like that. For the warrior, it's really, really important to establish some sort of weekly or daily, or, every couple days, some sort of practice that puts them back into their body and helps them train their strength, right? And train their core. I've also known a lot of people as warriors that are really also into like kinesiology, also like EFT, emotional freedom tapping, where you do the tapping and you do the tapping and you do the tapping, that sort of thing. And that kind of helps with anxiety. I've also known a lot of warriors that are more on like the spiritual kind of aspect. They do like really good cord cutting. You want to cut some cords, get a warrior coach, get a warrior type of coach, because they will help you and they'll keep you accountable to that, right? And that's why I think a lot of warriors pursue modalities, even if it's just in their personal life and they don't necessarily teach it. But in their personal life, they really do pursue physical types of things. Like I said, yoga, tai chi are good places to start. They're really also involved in the health field, right? So whether that's like physical health, could be dietary health, it could be, oh my gosh, it could be sexual health, it could be mental health, or all of the above, right? It's about discipline. And I don't mean to say that warriors are like gonna punish themselves. A warrior in their shadow might punish themselves, but I have known many warriors that do take it to that level, but usually they stop once they realize what they're actually doing, right? And so health and wellness advocacy is a really, really big, big, big thing to warriors. We're going to talk a little bit about the triple heater, right? So does anybody know what the triple heater is? Is anybody familiar with that concept? Hey, Mario, good to see you. The triple heater. Okay, so this is kind of like an Eastern Asian kind of perspective of looking at the energetic or light body. So we have the chakras. Yes, so we have the main chakras that we know of. The warrior deals a lot with the heart, with the solar plexus, and the sacral chakras. A lot with the solar plexus. A lot with the solar plexus. That tends to be like the main spot for the healer. That's kind of like their core center. So they're also people that really listen to their guts. They're really good at listening to their intuition. They might not be so good at the woo-woo part of the intuition and the psychic abilities and things like that. They may be a little skeptical about that much, but they know their body and they know what their body's feeling and they trust their body's feelings. And so when we think about that, it's really, really in that your core, your power center, your solar plexus, right? Your seat of power. It's also, the solar plexus is a lot how we deal with stress too, right? And how we navigate stress and living in stressful situations, that sort of thing. So the warrior, in my opinion, is very, very big on supporting and also teaching their clients how to deal with stressful situations and how to kind of get through that. And how they do that is in a very unique way. And it's important as well for the warrior because it sets the tone, right? So the healer archetype, it's more like setting the mood, setting the aesthetic and things like that. The warrior doesn't really do that, right? Remember when I talked about healer, I talked about instead of being steel, being bamboo. Be flexible when you need to be flexible, and then, don't dry yourself out, as in don't give too much so that you dry up and you become brittle and you fall apart. The warrior is actually really good at stressful situations. They do tend to have anxiety. They do tend to be more, I would say, anxious than any of the other archetypes. But instead of the healer kind of looking around themselves and like setting the aesthetic, the warrior finds their center within themselves in any situation, whether you're on the subway in New York City or you're out in the wilderness in Northern California and you're looking at all the red trees, the redwoods and things like that. Wherever the warrior is, their Zen is inside of them. And they can find, with practice and discipline, find their Zen, find their peace in any situation. So I often think of like warriors as like Navy SEALs or like paramedics or people that know how to keep their calm in the midst of crisis. Yeah. So the warrior is not really so concerned about what's going on an external level, but they're more concerned about what's going on an internal level, right? And so for them, it's about training themselves and training their clients about how to keep their cool, right? How to find their calm. And it doesn't matter for the warrior. They teach their clients, it doesn't matter what's going on externally, whether you're dealing with an illness or whether you're dealing with something externally happening to you, you're going through a divorce, something along those lines. The warriors really help their clients find their alignment and find their flow, and it usually happens by muscle memory. So when I talk a lot about physical exercise or physical activity, that's really important for the warrior because it develops repetition, it develops routine and discipline, right? And it helps them come back to center, whether that's even just breathing techniques. Even if you don't do something physical like Tai Chi or yoga or something like that, maybe you're just really good at finding your breath and bringing your breath back to center and those types of things. That's how the warrior kind of operates. It doesn't matter what's going on an external level. The world could be chaos, but the warrior, anytime, any place, they become strong and fearless because they are able to tap into that triple heater, that fire. And it usually happens through muscle memory, right? So when you're fearful of something, what is one of the greatest ways to kind of overcome a fear? Exposure therapy, right? Just doing it, and doing it over and over and over. And eventually, even if you go deer in the headlights where you're really scared and you're about to do something that's very scary, you just kind of default back on muscle memory, right? So that's kind of like how the warrior operates as far as stress, anxiety, dealing with environments, dealing with things on an external level. And that's why I think that if you are a warrior, I really want you to check into getting some sort of physical routine. And I also want you to check into EFT. I think EFT is really, really important for the warrior, definitely, because EFT is called emotional freedom tapping or emotional freedom technique, or, however you kind of want to look at that. But it's a way to deal with, especially for your clients. Your clients will find a lot of value in that, I think. I think that that could be definitely part of your coaching process, is to do EFT or kinesiology, something along those lines that kind of relates kind of back to that, right? Now, as far as the Kundalini energy, I did want to kind of touch on this before we go into the blocks, because I know we're coming up on an hour. I don't want these to be like too long, Yes. Lynn, you know what that is? Okay, cool. Triple heater, triple warmer. Yes, great. Okay, so we're on the same page here. As a warrior, it's going to be really important for you to understand energy, right? More so than in any of the other ones. As far as, well, the shaman and the mystic too, but I mean energy as far as like the different formats of energy, polar, like opposites and like type of energy. Another way you could look at this is like light or dark energy, positive and negative energy, or divine feminine or sacred masculine type of energy, projective energy versus receptive kind of energy. It's important, I think, for the warrior to understand that. And it kind of, it goes back to the Kundalini energy as well, because if you can understand the direction of energy, the flow of energy, then you can conjure energy, and you do that through the Kundalini. So the Kundalini is this idea that there is a space in your body that you can generate energy from. So you think about like the chi masters, right? You see the kung fu masters that like, or we talk about like the 1-inch punch, kind of like we talked about in the previous video, the healer archetype, where if you're standing this far away from someone and you go to, the 1-inch punch, that you can generate all this energy and push it out, right? So like, or you've seen like the masters, like I love watching this stuff, by the way. I'm fascinated by kung fu and I love martial arts. But one of the coolest things I watch is like the masters that can start fire, literally start fire from their hands. They can literally produce so much energy, projective energy, out of their hands or any other part of their body, that they can literally set things on fire. Like, it's just fascinating. Watch it. Check it out on YouTube. Sometimes there's a lot of fake stuff out there, but there's a lot of really good stuff out there. National Geographic has some stuff about that that you could check out. I think that's Nat Geo, and I can't think of the other one that's like a more like believable production company that does things like that. But as far as Kundalini goes, so there's this idea that, I'm kind of crisscrossing traditions here. I'm condensing it down into like a universalist kind of approach. Now, these are very different things when you look at different traditions, like, Asian versus Indian traditions, that sort of thing. But Kundalini is a buzzword that kind of goes around with, especially with the warriors. And that's this idea that there's a place in your body. I think it's usually like your root chakra or somewhere along those lines, like at the base of your spine. Basically where your reptilian kind of tail might have been, in the past 100 million years ago or something along those lines. But it's this idea that there is it's metaphorically symbolized by a serpent, right? A serpent that's coiled around in your lower root chakra type of area, tailbone kind of area, that you can slowly start awakening. And as you awaken this serpent, it slowly begins to uncoil. And what it does is it kind of wraps around your other chakras, and it kind of activates and heals your other chakras until it kind of goes out of your crown, and then it connects to more of like your celestial star kind of chakra that's connected to other, realms of existence. That could be extraterrestrials. I'm going in a weird place with this, but it's there, and it's there if you want to kind of check it out. It can be really interesting. But a lot of things that I've noticed for the Kundalini people that have the Kundalini, it's kind of marked as a spiritual journey, like an awakening, right? And most people say that your Kundalini becomes activated, or it starts to begin uncoiling when you go through your first dark night of the soul, or you go through the very beginning stages of your spiritual journey, which is usually by the catalyst of the dark night of soul. I've talked about that I did a video with Marla Martinson. It's in the unit section of the group, or you can go to her channel. You can type in, I think it's called Cosmic Conversations with Marla Martinson. And I kind of talked about how I kind of went through that and the dark night of the soul and catalyst and things like that. But the warrior definitely needs to understand masculine and feminine energy. And I don't mean like male and female. I just mean in terms of like projective and receptive kind of energy. Because when you can understand those patterns and you know how to receive and you know how to give, then you can definitely control energy a lot more easily, manifest a lot more easily. And so balancing those divine feminine and sacred masculine aspects in your body, in your energy, in your work, that can definitely be a key to success for the warrior. It's going to be very, very important to understand how those kind of things work together, and what benefits and what cons they kind of both have, and how to utilize that energy and how to balance that energy within you. Knowing, and the simplest terms I can put this is knowing when to fight and knowing when to fight, right? That sort of thing. So let's talk about some of the blocks that the warrior kind of has, right? Really important, I think. So when it comes to blocks, it's a lot. And I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them, but I'm going to talk about the 3 that I see the most common, especially how it pertains to starting a business, or at least having a successful spiritual life coaching business. So the blocked warrior really struggles with routine and really struggles with consistency. If you identify as a warrior through the quiz, but you really struggle with consistency, you definitely have a big block. One of the biggest blocks that I know warriors have is not being able to organize their life, or not being able to be reliable or consistent. And we have to understand why, right? So the why behind it all is the most important thing, in my opinion. So if you are someone who is super helpful, right? Super resourceful, and someone that goes first and kind of leads the way and looks for ways that they can help other people, but you really struggle with helping your own self. You understand what I mean by that? It really manifests as lack of patience, right? Or I also see it as like working and then giving up when it doesn't come to fruition fast enough, if that makes sense. Like not staying disciplined enough to see things out through to the end. So if you are a warrior and you constantly build and create things, create programs or create coaching programs, or like you create content or you start projects but you don't finish them, you likely have a blocked warrior archetype. Now, I won't say that this is where it all comes from, but this is where a lot of it comes from, is coming from the abandonment wound. Yeah. So a lot of warriors have abandonment wounds, and it's usually through the dominant parent, or it can come through the father. It's usually through the father, the sacred masculine part, because that is a masculine, sacred masculine energy is follow through and commitment and consistency, dependability, right? Those are one of the traits of sacred masculine. So it can come through the father wound. If you had an absent father, you had a father that was too difficult on you. For example, if you had a father who was absent, you may have learned that people are not reliable, so why should you be, right? If you had a father that was too smothering, you might be internally rebelling against that and self-sabotaging in that way. It doesn't always have to be the father. It was for me, but it can also be the dominant parent. So if you have the dominant parent, the one that is always there, right? They could be smothering, or they could, the parent that you want the most, you want to be recognized by, right? For your achievements, or you want their validation or something along those lines. It can also be just a guardian. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parent, but it could also be someone that you really looked up to. It could be someone that you kind of idolized and maybe had a negative experience with that. So for most warriors, think back to a time where you have learned abandonment, where you have learned that you're not good enough to stick around for, or that even good people can make bad decisions like that. You know what I mean? So if you identify with the concept of constantly creating, constantly destroying, and never seeing things out through the end, and being someone who has been working on your business for 2 or 3 years, has absolutely nothing to show for it. Like, you don't even have a logo that you can commit to. You don't have a website, or you don't even have like your name or your picture. Now, if you are dealing with, certain issues, like you're dealing with stalkers, or you're dealing with like unsupportive family members, that's one thing. But if you don't have those things in your life, those obstacles, those hindrances in your life, and you're still not showing up, you're still not committing, you likely have some type of abandonment wound, and you are repeating that wound, because what it is you create, you destroy, it's not good enough, you didn't receive that external validation, so you're not going to be able to internally validate, and so you destroy it. Also, you realize how powerful or good or productive something could be, and you decide to just destroy it because you don't necessarily believe in it. You don't believe you're worthy of it. You don't believe that it could ever be good enough, right? Or you're scared of your own success, right? You're scared of being successful. You're scared of being that person that's consistent, that's dependable, that's reliable, right? And so you sabotage yourself before you even get to that point. And that's probably one of the main things that I see is sabotage due to not being too scared of being successful, or thinking that you're not deserving of it, and usually through some patterns that you've learned with people who have abandoned you, or people in authority positions that have let you down. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yes, Lynn, that's a good way to look at it, as in yin yang. Yeah. Lynn says, I've done lots of self work and still feel there are blocks. Everybody's got blocks all of the time. So there's no such thing as never having blocks. So maybe relax on that a little and give yourself some credit there. Frayne says, definitely not reliable and consistent. So why not, Frayne? Why not? Marissa says, I used to bail on my content. I know. I remember. And now it's so different now, isn't it? And we're, like, we still work on things. There's always going to be the next thing to kind of work through. But yeah, I remember. Fran says, lots of ongoing projects at the same time. Because, we do that so that we feel like we're busy, because we associate being busy as being productive, right? And so being busy is kind of like a way to kind of deflect from dealing with stuff and taking personal responsibility for stuff. And trust me, we're all guilty of that. We all do that. Hey, Catherine, good to see you. Marissa says, your workshop on abandonment with content really helped me. Do you remember which one that was? Because I don't remember, but I know that I have one. If you don't remember, it's totally fine. So don't even worry about it. But it's somewhere out there. I mentioned it one time or twice, maybe. Catherine says, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah. So that's a really big thing. And we do that. Another block that the warrior has is that they often choose to be right rather than be rich. uh, yeah. So I laugh because that's me. I know that that's me. Warriors will live and die by their ideals. Yeah. So the warrior, how the healer has the savior complex, they want to save everybody. The warrior has a martyr complex, right? They will literally suffer, and they will just, relinquish anything good in their life, basically because they are stuck to their ideals or principles or beliefs, even their limiting beliefs, or, even social justice, that sort of thing. They can be prideful. I think of like Leo energy when it comes to the warrior. They can be very, very prideful. They can be perfectionists, and that can be the downfall. That can be what keeps a warrior from moving forward, right? So the warrior really has to learn a lot about loving detachment, something I speak a lot about on. I think I talked about that into the workshop, Diffusing Difficult Conversations with Clients. That's on the website, www.theprofitablepsychic.com, on the Academy website. That's a workshop up there. I talk a lot about what loving detachment kind of is. And even the warrior really has to learn that. I mean, it's good to have ideals, it's good to have principles and beliefs and things like that. But if you're going to go to the cross for them, who is that really helping, right? So the warrior has to really work on choosing to be rich rather than being right, and knowing when being right, or, they're the type of people that always have to have the last word, right? So they really have to work on that. And it comes back to control. It comes back to control issues. They don't feel like, it could be a block of the warrior that they don't feel very powerful, and therefore it manifests as micromanaging, or it manifests as micro-controlling every single aspect of their lives. That can come through over controlling what goes into their mouth, being over obsessive about exercise. It could be anything. It can manifest as obsession and excess of anything. And, that's an anxiety. That's a reaction to anxiety about not being able to control externally. So the warrior will naturally gravitate to what they can control, and that's the internal, right? So warriors really do have to learn how to kind of take a step back. They have to learn how to have their values and principles and beliefs and morals, but they also have to learn how to interact with everybody else. They can really kind of get caught in their head a lot of the times. They can kind of feel like they're the only person in the world sometimes, and it may come across as arrogance, but honestly, the best thing that a warrior can do to kind of overcome this block is just start listening more and stop talking less. It really boils down, in my opinion, to learning the skill of active listening, to not trying to, again, kind of like the healer, being the fixer all the time, but just simply being there to listen, to hear other points of view. It's very difficult for the warrior. Trust me, I know, because I am one. But yeah, so that's one of the blocks the warrior can have, is that they can be a little bit too aggressive with, this is how it is. This is the only way it can be. And this is how everybody should do it. Because if you go into that as a spiritual life coach, you're going to find out very, very quickly that your clients are going to come from all different walks, all different types of lives. They're all going to have their own values, morals, and beliefs, and they may not align with yours. I have a lot of vegan clients. I'm not vegan. I'll never be vegan again. That's just how it is. I've been vegan in the past. So, it could be the other way. Like if you're a vegan and your clients aren't vegans, that's something that you're going to have to, unless you're specifically a coach that helps people go vegan, if you don't, you're going to have to figure out a way to relate and to work within a diverse, atmosphere of people, environment of people. And that could be what's blocking you. Really could be. It was the branding one. Okay. Yeah, the branding challenge. What was it? Develop a brand that bewitches. I think that one. Oh yeah, the hotlines, right? That was Marissa. The psychic hotlines are like how to deal with the world 101. Like that's a direct link. Mel says, I was the struggling substitute teacher for 7 years because I just had to. But really, I needed to walk away 6 jobs to keep myself fed. Yeah. I totally understand that. I spread myself too thin, Mel says. Yeah, definitely. That can definitely be a warrior thing. Okay, so the other block for the warrior is that they tend to be overgivers. And I see this a lot too. I'm still constantly, every single day, dealing with this myself. They tend to have poor work-life balance. As far as what I mean by that is they tend to work more than they have life, right? They tend to be the overworkers. They tend to be the people that take the extra shifts, that take the long hours. They tend to be the people that they just cannot stand someone not having access to the tools or something that they need, right? Kind of like the healer in that way. And we're all kind of like that. All of the archetypes are like that in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. So for the warrior, though, they really struggle with burnout. So again, figuring out how to deal with that burnout in your own life and then helping other people deal with that burnout and being able to, so the warrior really needs to focus on how they can take all of that creative energy and turn it into like a steady stream rather than going back to the element of fire, right? So if you have a lot of fire and like you tend that fire, and it's very easy to tend that fire because your imagination's really rampant, right? And so that before you know it, that fire can be something totally like, it can almost be too big and almost kind of smothering, right? That's like a metaphor, like for work, you know, you're really good at it. You're really dedicated, you get a lot of fulfillment out of it, but you can kind of overdo it. Yeah. And so what happens is, you know, you have an explosion basically, and the fire just kind of burns itself out, right? And so when that happens, if you find yourself, if you are resentful or jaded, or you know how to help people, but you just cannot be bothered to help them, like that's when you know you've reached burnout. That's when you know you've crossed that line into, okay, I've been working too much, right? When you start to resent having to show up, or when you start to resent having to go to coaching sessions, or you start to, feel like you're too busy, your life is out of control, and you're like wondering how you got here, that's because you're an overgiver, and that's because you have to really be the role model for having proper work-life balances, having those boundaries, right? Super, super, super important. That's going to be one of the big lessons for warriors is not overworking. Stop it. I'm the same way. I do it too. So that's what I do is I set myself a schedule. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, those are my days that I know I definitely will be working, and I try to fit as much as I can into those 3 days. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I give my weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, I don't work unless it's like I made a sale and I have to go enroll somebody or something like that. Like I only work if there's money involved, right? Everybody understand what I mean by that? Now, Tuesdays and Thursdays, this is how I've found my balance. Maybe this is helpful for you. Maybe it'll work for you too. Doing something kind of like what I do. Tuesdays and Thursdays are my days where if I don't feel like it, I don't do it. If I don't want to work, I don't obligate myself to that. If I do feel good and I do feel like I have energy and I want to put some energy out there and I want to plant some seeds out there, then I can show up. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are my optional days. And those are the days that I refuse to feel guilty about not working. And Saturdays and Sundays too. Those are like it's not even a question in my mind. I used to work 7 days a week. I used to be that type of person because I felt like if I didn't reply right away, I would lose that sale. Or if I wasn't immediately available, people wouldn't see me as trustworthy or dependable, right? That was a limiting belief that I had to kind of deal with. The reality is people will wait. If you're good, people will wait for you, and they don't mind waiting for you, right? And this whole idea that we have to constantly be busy, constantly be doing something, constantly be replying to emails or social media or whatever, or in our inboxes and things like that. It's just, again, your nervousness, that's your anxiety manifesting as busy work to deflect from what you're not actually dealing with, right? And so I encourage you as a warrior, setting up a schedule, sticking to that schedule and being consistent with that and figuring out, what is going to be a good flow for you. So I like to work a lot one day. I maybe don't work the next day. Work a lot one day, don't work the next day. Work a lot one day, take 2 days off. That's what I have found for me as a warrior to be the best when it comes to managing my work and life. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful. So do you guys want to talk about the path to 6 and 7 figures? And then we can end this training for today. Let you guys get back to doing important things. Thank you, Marissa. Mario says, can we have a schizophrenic soul calling? My test came up, mystic shaman. Then I heard the healer. That's me. And now I hear warrior. You're all of them. We are all of them. But the purpose of the quiz, in my opinion, is to show you what is much needed right now, if that makes sense. So if you take the quiz and you take it as you are right now, you'll find out, okay, this is what I'm dealing with right now. When you take the quiz and you look at it more of like a future forward oriented like kind of view, like you don't give the answers that you automatically do right now, but you write down the answers that you want to be, it can help you manifest that, right? So it's not that you aren't something just because it says you aren't on a quiz somewhere. Like that would be giving it too much authority, in my opinion. It's not really meant for that. What it's really meant for is to give you a starting point of what your energy is right now and what are some things that you need to work on right now, or what is best for you right now to manifest in your spiritual coaching business, or to take it as what would I like it to be, and then you can kind of work and you can figure out where you are, and then you can figure out where you want to go. And again, that's like that collapsing realities type of thing where you become like a time traveler manifester, where you have it. If you can visualize and you can see it in your brain, then you're 90% of the way there, right? So really, it's just to give you some mile markers. It's not to put you in a box, because I would hate to put anybody in a box, because I think that we are faceted people. And I don't think that, you're just one thing and one thing only. And you can also go back to that quiz and you can take it, say, okay, I want to start a group coaching program, but I'm not really sure what kind of group coaching program that I want to start. So go to the quiz, answer it as if how you want your group coaching program to go, and then see what your results are, and then build your group coaching program off of that. Say you want to put together a one-on-one package, answer it according to how you want the dynamic of your one-on-one coaching sessions to go, and then build a coaching program based off of that, right? So it's more like a launching pad, not necessarily like this is only what you are and this is only what you can do, right? So I don't want anybody to ever think that. Mel says, so here's a fun fact. I didn't even take the quiz and happened to hop on today because you were live, and apparently I'm the warrior. Go take the quiz and think about what your intention is. What is the intention for why you're taking the quiz, right? It might be different. You've taken it once, maybe your intention changes. Maybe your answer changes too. On different days, maybe you have different answers. So it's really just kind of up to you. Wendy says, Sundays are my beautiful all love family friends, or be lazy, eat what I want, absolute freedom day. Absolutely. Marissa says, I have learned the hard way that I need to wait until I am centered rather than constantly react. And and so that's definitely a warrior thing. Yeah, for sure. Warrior is definitely response, not reaction. And that can be something that a warrior can really benefit from. Good. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so your path to 6 and 7 figures. So the things that are really important for you to teach your clients are boundaries. How to enforce boundaries, being accountable to boundaries. Self-care is also going to be a really, really big one. Helping people manage their energy, manage their stress, their anxiety, accountability, and goal setting. So I see warriors as people that like help people keep accountable to their goals. Maybe you want to put out a planner, or maybe you create schedules for your clients. Maybe you are an accountability coach. Okay, so that's where you're really, really in your element. That's where you are most useful and helpful and resourceful, and that's where you really get the best results for people. So in my opinion, the most profitable spiritual business path that you could take as a warrior is to design your own systems and strategies for success. Whatever success is, in whatever medium. Success for your diet, success for self-care, success for work-life balance, whatever. Success in your work, success in your relationships. Whatever that really is going to be what's important for the warrior. And to teach that to other people so that they can keep themselves accountable, right? And that they can keep themselves, they can learn like life management skills, right? Also, basically pass your knowledge on to people so that they can become accountable to themselves. That's also really, really important too. Helping people establish healthy habits and to make good decisions for themselves. And so, like all of the other archetypes, I'm going to tell you, yeah, you can work one-on-one with people. And I highly recommend that you do that. Work with people on self-care, boundaries, busting through limiting beliefs, helping people achieve their goals, right? Like you are a life coach in every sense of the word. What people usually think of life coaches, that's the warrior, right? But in my opinion, it's going to be far more beneficial as a warrior and help you manage your work life to really get into passive income, to design your own systems and strategies, like how to cope with stress, how to overcome procrastination, any type of motivational type of program or course or something along those lines, like basically teaching people how to organize their lives, right? So I teach marketing and strategy, and I teach content creation, and I teach that in a very specific format sometimes through the use of content creation calendars. So that's what I teach people. So yes, I worked for a really long time creating content for people, and I worked for a really long time helping people, figure out like what content they're good at and things like that. But where I'm most helpful and where I really am the most impactful is helping people create their own content calendars, right? And teaching people how to create their own content so that they're not reliable. They're not relying on me. It's not that codependency thing that we talked about earlier, but it's more about teaching people systems and strategies to actually achieve what they actually want, right? Breaking it down into physical step by step. So you guys are going to be good at like creating planners, creating guidebooks, step-by-step programs, right? That sort of thing. So that's going to be how you're going to get 6 and 7 figures. And that's how you're going to do it very fast and in a very natural way for you. So releasing like courses and DIY guides, things like that, like to help your clients and other warriors kind of like you learn how to have a better relationship with their life, their work, their bodies, their relationships, their job. Like basically, I view warriors as being relationship based, like their relationship to everything else, right? And teaching people how to have better relationships with whatever else they need to improve their relationships with. That's how you're going to take it to kind of like a global scale where you're going to help not just a handful of people, but you're going to help hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions, right? Lots and lots and lots of people, and help people become self-sufficient, I guess is a really important thing for the warrior. So I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope you've got a lot out of this as we talked about the warrior archetype. And if you're watching this as a replay, hey, if you're a warrior, let me know. And if you would, type in the comments, if you're watching this, what has been the single most thing that you have gotten out of this training today? Would love to know what you are going to take away from this, or what really hit home for you the most, where you are going to take what I've said today, start making some changes in your life, and start seeing how you can have a better, more easy time being in your flow and alignment in your spiritual business, and how obviously it all kind of relates back to getting clients, right? Getting paid for your work so that you can do the important work that you really, really want to do. Yeah, so Mel says, unfortunately, I work 7 days a week, really working on at least taking 1 day off, as I have no private clients yet and I'm still just hotlines and need to make enough money. Goal is to take 2 days off a week. And, as long as you recognize that that's a dysfunction and that your overall quality of life would be better if you can get to that point, then I think you're on the right track. And it's just baby steps until we get to that point, right? All right, guys. So I hope you have a great Friday, great weekend, great week. So Mario says what he got the most out of this is how I can use each archetype for each part of my business. Yeah, really. Maybe we'll do a training just on that too at some point. That could be something we talk about. Marissa says the biggest thing that she got out of this was that she can use the quiz to create content. It's kind of like a neat hack, isn't it? It's kind of like a neat hack. Yeah. All right, my friends, I will see you guys in the group. I so appreciate you spending time with me. Next week, we will be talking about the shaman. So I'll see you then. Bye.